What up, Space Fam? Goes in here from AnimeUproar, back at it again with a brand new Naruto video about every Kage known to man. Quite the undertaking, but you guys definitely deserve it after we hit over 6,000 likes on the All Akatsuki members and their powers explained video. Similarly, smash that like button this time and let's try to get 6,000 likes on this one as well to unlock the next Naruto video. These videos take a bunch of time and effort, so I really appreciate it when you guys show your support through destroying that like button and also leaving suggestions for future Naruto videos below. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe, and this is crucial. Hit that notification bell and select all, or you will miss future Naruto videos. And while you wait for the next video to drop, be sure to check out my growing Naruto playlist, which includes videos about the Hokage, all Otsutsuki, all Uzumaki, and much more. Now without further ado, let's get into it, spoilers and all. So in this video, we are going to be looking at every Kage from each of the 5 villages. This includes all the Kazekage, meaning wind shadow from Sunagakure, aka the village hidden in the sand, all the Mizukage, meaning water shadow, from Kirigakure, aka the village hidden in the mist, all the Raikage, meaning lightning shadow, from Kumogakure, aka the village hidden in the clouds, all the Tsuchikage, meaning earth shadow, from Iwagakure, aka the village hidden in the stones, and of course all the Hokage, meaning fire shadow, from Konohagakure, aka the village hidden in the leaves. So we're going to cover every known Kage or leader from these 5 key hidden villages, each of which corresponds to one of the 5 great shinobi countries. In general, the Kage is the strongest shinobi of the continent and is charged with leading and protecting their village. The first ever Kage was Hashirama Senju, who was elected after the formation of Konoha, and eventually other nations were like, hey, that's a cool system, and adopted it for themselves. We will start this video with the Kazekage from the village hidden in the sand. The first known Kazekage was Reto, and he founded the village hidden in the sand. He was strong, and it's said that he used his overwhelming power to get all of his nation's ninja under his control. Unfortunately, we do not know much more about Reto except that he was present at the first Gokage summit and that he went in order to ask for more fertile land for his people. We know he was assassinated, and many Kazekage would go on to share the same fate, leading people to believe that the Kazekage were cursed. Reito was followed by Shamon, the second Kazekage. He stands out a lot with his mostly bald head and the giant dragon-looking tattoo covering it. The dragon's claw actually covered the dude's eye. In a data book, it was revealed that he was into researching Jinchuriki with the hope of increasing his village's power. Once again, we don't know a lot about the specifics of Shamon's power, but we do know that he used puppets in battle, and so he was a kind of precursor for Sasori and Kankuro. He was clearly strong since he was picked as Kazekage, and since he was appointed to go with the first Kazekage to the Gokage summit. It is also noteworthy that under his rule, there was military expansion and groundbreaking advancement, further suggesting that he was a powerful man and one good at military strategy as well. Like his predecessor, he fell victim to an assassination. The third Kazekage was considered to be exceptionally strong, stronger than both of his predecessors. According to Sasori, the third Kazekage's Iron Sand technique made his name the most powerful of all. The third was intelligent enough to develop his Iron Sand technique after examining the One-Tail's power. His Kekkei Genkai magnet release let him convert his chakra into magnetic force, allowing him to manipulate the iron powder in his iron sand. Thus, he could perform his own unique version of sand manipulation. The third's magnet powers also made metallic weapons useless against him. Furthermore, he could use his sand to jam up the puppets of his enemies, so you know he would have done very well against the second Kazekage. As Chio pointed out, this iron sand technique wasn't just praised, it was considered to be the most feared weapon in the village's history. Eventually, the third Kazekage was somehow beat by the Akatsuki's very own Sasori. He turned the third into one of his human puppets, and it was his favorite because of how hard it was to attain. In the anime, the Kazekage's magnet release was more powerful than that of Sasori's puppet, which could also use the unique Kekkei Genkai. So yeah, at the end of the day, he was used to hype up Sasori, but this dude was clearly a legend and a very interesting character in Naruto's history. And I would have loved to see the fight between the third Kazekage and Sasori. I'm sure it was amazing. But for now, let's move on to the fourth Kazekage and a contender for the worst dad in all of anime, Rasa, aka Gaara's dad. Rasa turned his son into a Jinchuriki by placing the One Tails aka Shukaku inside him and then wanted to assassinate him when Kid Gaara failed to practice complete control over his emotions and over Shukaku. Because of his father, Gaara thought that no one loved him for a long time, and it's understandable that a kid who thought no one loved him would get emotional. But beyond his flawed parenting, there are some interesting aspects to Rasa's powers. Rasa learned the third's magnet release, which is a combination of earth release and wind release. He used this magnet style to control gold dust. As Rasa himself explains when he's brought back for a bit, gold dust is heavier than sand. If mixed, the gold dust can slow the sand down. This is how he'd counter Gaara's sand and stop Shukaku, the sand spirit, when he started running amok. He could use his gold dust to form an eye to monitor different locations, and in general he could use the sand bending moves we're used to seeing with his gold dust, like creating waves out of it, raising it for defensive purposes, and launching swift attacks with it. It was also revealed that he was skilled in water release and could create a water blade that could actually cut through the so-called absolute defense, aka the shield of sand, no small feat. In a data book, it was revealed that he was capable of using yin release. And with that, we move on to the fifth Kage on this list, the final Kazekage, my boy Gaara. Gaara is such a good example of the shonen trope that involves a crazy, seemingly irredeemable villain becoming a good guy and friend. I remember hating and being freaked out by Gaara during the Chunin exams, and thanks to the great writing, I changed my mind about him and realized that he acted like that because of his upbringing, and when offered a chance to change, he took it. Gaara's character arc is undoubtedly one of the most touching and powerful ones in Naruto, and it's fun to see how he pretty much accomplishes Naruto's own goal before him by becoming the Kage of his own village before even Naruto does, thus giving Naruto more motivation and an example to move toward and get inspired by. But anyways, enough of my fanboying over Gaara. Let's turn to his powers. As a kid, Gaara was killing the assassins that were trying to kill him. And we all know how much Gaara was hyped up during the Chunin exams. He set the record for completing the Forest of Death and came out of it unscratched. Looking at his childhood, it's no surprise that he was strong enough to become the fifth Kazekage, and he did possess the one-tailed Shukaku, which obviously increased his power as well. When his father is brought back with the Edo Tensei along with some other Kage, Gaara, who is the commander-in-chief of the allied shinobi forces combat divisions at the time, is strong enough to defeat him. Gaara can use earth, lightning, and wind release, and magnet release as well. He can use magnet release to increase the density of his sand, which can be especially useful for creating a strong defense. Then of course there's Gaara's sand bending and sand manipulation. I know this isn't Avatar: The Last Airbender, but you will catch me calling people earthbenders, waterbenders, and so on for every series, and that pretty much means people who can manipulate that element in question. Our Gaara is a sandbender in this sense. In his gourd, he has personal sand with his own chakra that he could use quicker, but he can also use surrounding sand or break down surrounding earth into sand. Even after Shukaku is taken from his body, Gaara can continue to manipulate large amounts of sand without a noticeable difference. Then there are moves like Sand Binding Coffin, where Gaara surrounds and traps his opponents with sand. He can then let them suffocate or use Sand Burial to make the sand contract and kill them instantly. And as mentioned, there is Gaara's absolute defense, which includes his shield of sand that automatically protects him. It's actually his mother's doing. Even after her death, she continues to protect him like she promised to do, and that's just so heartwarming to know, especially after Gaara's horrible upbringing. Then there's an armor of sand that protects his body if people somehow manage to get past this automatic shield. The dude can even manipulate enough sand to protect his entire village from Deidara's bomb, a most impressive feat. Furthermore, Gaara can use his sand to fly, create sand clones, create a third spying eye, and more. Another hype technique is the Grand Sand Mausoleum Seal that that can trap very powerful opponents and seal them within a pyramid of sand. When Gaara was a Jinchuriki, Shukaku could take over his body when Gaara was under enough stress or fell asleep. Then it would transform into his giant one-tails form, and as previously mentioned, run amok. Obviously, being a Jinchuriki is always a nice power boost, but interestingly enough, Gaara is still very powerful without Shukaku, so much so that people mistakenly assume that he's still a Jinchuriki sometimes. In the third data book, his stats were as follows: a 5 in ninjutsu, a 2 in taijutsu, a 3.5 in genjutsu, a 4 in intelligence, a 2.5 in strength, a 3 in speed, a 5 in stamina, and a 4 in hand seals, giving him an overall score of 29 out of 40. I'll mention stats when we have access to them as with Gaara, but sometimes we won't, and in those cases I'll just move straight on to the next Kage. So now that we've finished looking at all of the Kazekage, let's move on to the Mizukage or water shadows from Kirigakure, in the land of water. The first Mizukage was Byakuren, and he founded the village hidden in the mist. He rocked a long gray beard and had a scar over his left eye, and he appears to have been blind in that eye. With his old wise man appearance, it won't come as a surprise that he was praised for his worldly wisdom. He too was present at the first Hokage summit during the first Shinobi War, and he was not happy when he heard some of the first Kazekage's seemingly greedy demands. Unfortunately, we don't know much more about him other than he'd probably get along well with the old wise man of Avatar Uncle Iroh, since even the word Byakuren translates to White Lotus, so these two wise old dudes would be destined to hit it off, I feel like. We also know he must have been powerful since he was able to not only become a Mizukage, but also create Kirigakure in the first place as well. The second Mizukage was Gengetsu Hozuki. He was a member of the Hozuki clan and looked like someone you don't want to mess with. By the way, the Hozuki clan are known for their ability to turn their solid bodies into liquid. It's sort of like having a water Logia power in One Piece, where you can turn parts of your body liquid so physical attacks don't hurt you. Gengetsu would also clash with the second Tsuchikage, more on him later, and they would both end up killing each other in their final exchange. He also knew old man Onoki, the third Tsuchikage, when he was young and used to pick on him, which is pretty hilarious. When he was brought back by the Edo Tensei, he almost killed Onoki with the Hozuki's clan's water gun jutsu, but luckily Gaara was quick enough to save him. Gengetsu was very impressed by his fellow browless Kage and said Gaara would go on to do big things. Gaara and friends had a lot of trouble defeating him when he was temporarily brought back to life. He knew water, lightning, earth, and fire release, and yin and yang release. As mentioned, he could turn his body into liquid and back as he wished, and fire his very deadly water gun jutsu. Gengetsu's body was also a mixture of water and oil, a kind of oil that made normal sand attacks practically useless against him. Then there was his very powerful Steam Imp clone that would heat up before exploding and cool down again, and repeat the process until it was stopped. That's why it was called Gengetsu's Infinite Explosion Ninjutsu. Eventually, Gaara had to use his father's gold dust in order to stop Gengetsu and his Steam Imp, since the gold would be melted and then welded onto the clone, so it would be slower, and to boot, since gold has good thermal conductivity, it prevented it from heating up enough to explode again. Gengetsu called Gaara a golden child after he used that impressive strategy, and I love that pun. But at the same time, if his father hadn't been brought back, they would have been in big trouble. Overall, Gengetsu was strong and very cool, but let's move on to the third Mizukage now. This long dark-haired man accompanied the first Mizukage to the first Hokage summit during the first Shinobi War. Unfortunately, we don't know much about him except that he was probably the strongest shinobi in Kirigakure while he was Kage, and that he was strong enough to serve as the first Mizukage's bodyguard during the Hokage summit. And that about covers it for this unnamed man. But that's one of the reasons Naruto is so good. Even though we know next to nothing about this guy, you just know that he probably has a very interesting story behind him, and I would actually love to read about it if it ever came out in a bonus or side story. But for now, we move on to the fourth Mizukage, who has a name, and it is Yagura Karatachi. Yagura was no joke, despite his youthful appearance and despite getting genjutsu'd pretty hard by Obito. As a child, he partook in his village's ritual, where academy students were forced to murder one another in order to graduate. Like Naruto and Gaara, Yagura was a Kage Kage and Jinchuriki, specifically the Three Tails Jinchuriki. Not only that, he was one of the first people to gain complete control over a tailed beast. In fact, he became a perfect Jinchuriki at a young age. And in the anime, he fought Akatsuki members Juzo and Itachi, and managed to actually kill Juzo, one of the 7 legendary swordsmen of the mist. And Itachi only managed to stop him by using a Materasu. Notably, Yagura's weapon of choice was a sort of staff with a hook at each end. Yagura could use water release and wind release in the anime as well. One of Yagura's most interesting techniques was his ability to create water mirrors that reflect the enemy's attack literally. The reflection actually materializes from the mirror and the enemy's exact same technique is used against them. In this way, Yagura can completely cancel out other people's attacks. With his perfect Jinchuriki control, he could undergo partial transformations or enter full Three Tails mode. He could also launch Biju balls and use the Coral Palm technique, which causes coral to quickly form around the opponent from the point of contact, causing them to lose mobility. And although there's more I could say about this Kage of the Bloody Mist, for the purpose of this video, we should be moving on to the next Kage, Mizukage number 5, Mei Terumi. Yagura's bloody reign wasn't really viewed as a positive one, so Mei spent a lot of time on reform and fixing relations with other villages. She also went through the deadly academy graduation ritual of her own village. She's the first kunoichi or female ninja we'll be covering, and when you have a female Kage in Naruto, you know she's gonna be pretty strong. She can use water, earth, fire, and lightning release, but what's really interesting is that she has access to 2 Kekkei Genkai, including lava release, which combines earth and fire release, and boil release, which combines fire and water release. Boil release creates a mist capable of melting bodies and even melting Sasuke Susanoo, which is supposed to be an absolute defense. Mei is seemingly immune to the mist, but it's indiscriminate for everyone else and so has to be used when there are no allies around. And lava release is pretty much lava bending, which is just as dope in the Naruto world as it is in the Avatar world. It's also notable that Mei could use water style to not only defend against Madara's fire style attack, but she could then go on to use that same body of water to form an attacking water dragon. The transition from defense to attack is seamless and I love it. Lastly, she can use the hidden mist jutsu in order to obscure her own movements and that of her allies, like Zabuza did against Kakashi. The cool thing is this jutsu can counter the Sharingan and Rinnegan's perceptiveness, but in the anime, Byakugan users can still see through the mist and sensors can still locate people too. Next, after the dangerously hot Mei Terumi, we got the 6th Mizukage, Chojiro, who is also a member of the 7 Ninja Swordsmen of the Mist. He went from simping hard over the 5th Mizukage to becoming a Mizukage himself. Although he may not look it at first glance, Chojiro is actually pretty awesome. Even among the 7 swordsmen of the Mist, Chojiro is considered to be a master swordsman. In the Boruto anime, he fought against 3 opponents wielding blades of the hidden mist, and he beat them using only a broken katana. He also proceeded to lift the very heavy Kubikiri Bocho, aka Zabuza's blade, effortlessly with one hand. With Gaara's help, Chojiro also fared well during an encounter with Urashiki Otsutsuki in Boruto, and being able to not get completely flexed on by an Otsutsuki is always noteworthy. Chojiro's blade is called Hiramekare, the flat fish. It can store chakra which can later be released. The chakra surrounds the blade and can take on any shape the user wishes. For instance, against Sasuke, Chojiro shaped it into a hammer that sent Sasuke flying even though he had Susanoo's ribs activated. Against Black Zetsu, his blade unleashed a huge chakra slash that left Black Zetsu unable to move, and even Naruto had to admit that Chojiro was good. Bystanders were impressed not only by the size of his sword, but also by his skill in wielding it. Black Zetsu was surprised by how Chojiro could transform the shape of his blade so fast. The 2-handle sword can also be split into 2 swords with 1 handle each if you want to throw in some 2-sword style moves. Beyond that, the sword can use the bone mutilation technique. This technique launches chakra needles at the opponent. These needles disrupt the chakra pathway system and slowly kill the target. Lastly, Chojiro is only known to use water release, but he is very skilled at it. If he doesn't have a sword on him, he can create a water blade, which is handy because he's easily one of the most skilled swordsmen in Naruto. So yeah, I hope that I helped get across how out Chojiro is actually pretty strong and cool, but now we must move on to the Raikage of Kumogakure, aka the village hidden in the clouds. And these guys are definitely some of the coolest Kage around. A, the first Raikage, and get used to hearing the name A because we'll hear that a lot, founded the village of Kumogakure. It was this Raikage who seemingly sent the Gold and Silver brothers to capture the Nine Tails before Madara tamed it, though they failed. If things did go down like this, it was a strategic idea because the power of the Nine Tails would dramatically increase the military power of any nation. We don't know much else other than that he was present at the first Gokage summit and he had to be very strong in order to form and then rule over a powerful shinobi village. The second Raikage, also called A, was the longtime bodyguard of the first. Again, info is lacking, but he had to be powerful to be chosen as a bodyguard of the first Raikage and then to be chosen as the second Raikage. He was also good at the political side of things and was known for doing a lot in order to achieve peace. It was actually during a formal ceremony that cemented the alliance between Konoha and Kumogakure that A and the second Hokage were attacked by the Gold and Silver brothers. Although Tsunade mentions that the brothers drove the second Hokage close to the brink of death, it's not made clear what happened to A. Moving on to A number 3, aka the third Raikage, who is said to be the greatest Raikage of all. He was said to have an invincible spear and an impenetrable shield, and Naruto had to actually use the third's own spear, aka his own attack, to penetrate through his incredible defense, thus showing that his spear was stronger than his shield. Still, it's pretty cool when you're so strong that only you can hurt you. And I haven't even mentioned his remarkable speed that impressed all those who witnessed it. This dude is as legendary as they come. He faced 10,000 ninja for 3 days and 3 nights in order to help his people get away from the enemy. He was also able to go head to head with the Eight Tails unarmored and unarmed, and the scar he ended up with was self-inflicted. But let's get into some specific abilities. The third could use lightning, fire, and earth release. He was known for his black lightning, which he passed on to Darui. He could also use lightning release chakra mode, aka cloak himself in lightning, which increased his speed, reaction time, attack, and defense. Lightning release chakra mode is fast enough to dodge Amaterasu. We're told that not even the Sharingan can keep up with this technique when it is used by the fourth Raikage. Besides that, we're told that long-range wind release attacks are the only ones that can reach the third Raikage, but even they cannot give him a decisive blow. And then there's his strongest ninjutsu, which allowed him to pool lightning chakra into his fingertips, and the less fingers he used, the more focused and thus powerful the technique was. This technique is so sharp that it can even pierce through a rubber wall, even though rubber is resistant to electricity. The attack was called an invincible spear, and as I mentioned, it was even stronger than his famously strong and sturdy body, and as a result, it was the key to beating him. Now, although I feel like I could talk about this legend all day, let's move on to the fourth Raikage and the fourth A. A number 4 is the son of the third Raikage, and he does not disappoint. This dude is so cool. At one point, he just cuts off his arm that's been hit with Amaterasu like it's no big deal. He was also elected to be the supreme leader of the allied shinobi forces, a title that you'd expect to go to someone who is extremely strong. Similar to the third, he combines ninjutsu and taijutsu, making use of the lightning release chakra mode in order to enhance his speed, attack, and defense. Before Naruto surpassed him, A was the self-proclaimed fastest shinobi in the world since Minato passed away. Karin also mentioned that his chakra levels were through the roof, comparable to that of a tailed beast. His fight against Sasuke was absolutely amazing, and although Amaterasu did eventually prove to be effective against him, the fourth Raikage clearly had Sasuke on the defense. And he was so strong that he was able to break through the so-called absolute defense that is Susanoo's ribcage. The fourth Raikage could use lightning, earth, and water release, and it's worth mentioning that Sasuke's Chidori, which would have killed most people, left the fourth practically unfazed. All in all, this guy was very fast, very cool, and very strong. Just like his father, this lightning shadow didn't fall far from the lightning tree. Lastly, among the Raikage, there is Darui, and for once, not another A. Darui was the right-hand man to the fourth before he inherited the title of Kage, and Darui was also skilled enough to play the biggest role in beating the very powerful Gold and Silver brothers. And obviously, he continued to get stronger and more skilled until he eventually became the fifth Raikage. The dude also has insane chakra levels as seen when he was was able to use multiple treasured tools that belong to the Sage of Six Paths and continue to fight effectively. Even one could kill a normal person because of how much chakra these tools consume. When it comes to releases, Darui can use wind, water, and of course lightning. One of my favorite combos has Darui use a water wall technique that he combines with lightning release in order to electrocute his trapped target. Then there's storm release, which is a combination of lightning and water and allows him to fire and control beams of electricity that flow like water. Then, as mentioned, there's black lightning that he inherited from the third Raikage. He can form a black panther made of lightning that will shock any target it comes into contact with. Darui is also very skilled with his signature cleaver sword. He can run lightning-based chakra through the sword to increase its destructive power. The blade maintains its charge even when Darui isn't holding it. And that's it for the Raikage. As a fanboy of lightning-based powers, I gotta say I love the Raikage, but the time has come to move on to the Tsuchikage, or Earth Shadow of Iwagakure. There have been 4 thus far, starting with the first, Ishikawa, who founded Iwagakure in the land of Earth. According to the anime, Ishikawa was a member of the Kamizuru clan, a clan known for controlling bees. Of course, he attended the first Kage summit. He also contained sacred scrolls about bug taming arts in the anime. And before the series of Naruto, bugs didn't seem that interesting or cool to me at all, but you gotta admit that Shino Aburama proved that they could be quite deadly indeed. Some cool facts about this Kage are that he could use Earth Release to fly, and as mentioned, it suggested that he used insect-based ninjutsu. But as usual, we don't know much more about the first, except that he was strong enough to create his own village. Moving on to the second Tsuchikage, Mu, the cool mummy-looking Kage. He was known as the non-person or the null man, because according to Kabuto, he had neither form nor chakra, suggesting he was kind of like the invisible man, not leaving a trace. Mu was skilled enough to kill the second Mizukage, although Mu was also killed in return. Mu was very skilled in terms of being able to sense chakra from great distances, and being able to identify people in different populations based on their chakra signatures. Being able to sense chakra so well also allowed him to dodge enemy attacks even if they were coming from his blind spot. He could split in two and avoid lethal or ceiling attacks, but this would also cut his power in half. Not surprisingly, this non-person was practically impossible to detect through normal means, to the point where it is impressive if someone does discover his presence. He is one of the few shinobi who had access to all 5 nature transformations, including Yang Release. He could use Earth Release to fly and Water Release to hide his presence by bending light. Such a cool ability that Jiraiya would love to have for obvious reasons, but as if all of this, including flying and being invisible, wasn't enough, he also had access to Dust Release or Particle Style, a combination of Earth, Wind, and Fire Release. This release consists of forming a cube and releasing it at the enemy. The cube grows in size and will automatically dismantle anything it touches, including people's bodies, at a near molecular level, thus turning them into dust. This technique is so powerful that it can be easily used to fight off large enemy numbers. All in all, Dust Release is one of the best techniques in Naruto, and Mu is definitely one of my favorite Kage. I would have loved to see more of him doing his thing in his own time. But for now, let's move on to the third Tsuchikage, our old boy Onoki, an over 80-year-old man that still kicks butt. What's not to love? Don't let his back pain fool you. He saved the Raikage against Madara, and even Madara had to praise this old-timer, at one point singling him out as the problem among all 5 Kage. Onoki can use Earth, Fire, Lightning, Wind, and Yang Release. But what's even more interesting is that according to the novels, he can use Lava Release. And like the previously mentioned Kage, he can definitely use Dust or Particle Style Release. As mentioned, with Particle Style, he could turn anything in his path into dust, at least if they don't have hacks abilities that can absorb jutsus. His Particle Style is said to be able to destroy an entire island. Even Deidara is impressed by such destructive potential. There's so much other great stuff about this old legend. He is exceptionally skilled at Earth Release, and he can use it to fly, create clones, or even large rock golems. Furthermore, in a very earthbending-esque way, he can encase his fist in rock in order to increase the power of his punches, and he can increase and decrease the weights of objects as he sees fit. So he can increase the weight of rock punches, or he can increase the weight of other things to slow opponents down, or as already mentioned, decrease his weight in order to fly. All in all, I love this awesome old earthbender, and he would also fit in very well within the Avatar world. Just gotta put that out there. Then there's the fourth and latest Tsuchikage, Kurotsuchi. She is the granddaughter of Onoki and related to the first Tsuchikage as well. When her grandpa retired, which is understandable at his age, I think he deserved it, Kurotsuchi took the reins. It's definitely hard not to live in her grandfather's earth shadow, but she is strong in her own right. She can use earth, fire, and water release as well as yin release in the novels. She is hyped up by a legend in Boruto that she didn't flinch in the face of 100,000 Zetsu in the Fourth Shinobi War. Her earthbending too is impressive, as she can create powerful rock shelters for defense, deadly spears from the earth that could impale a target Dracula style, and she could just plain old hide in the ground as well. She could also unearth other people or things hiding in the ground, so good luck holding your ground against her. She is a master of lava release and can use it in conjunction with water release to create quicklime that can trap opponents like quick drying cement. And so we've covered all of the different Kage except the Hokage from Konoha. And since I said I'll cover the Kage in this video, I will quickly go through these as well, but I do suggest that you check out my all 7 Hokage and their powers explained video, where you'll get a more detailed breakdown of each Hokage. Number 1 is the man, the myth, the legend, the one known as the god of shinobi, Hashirama Senju, the founder of the Hidden Leaf Village with his friend and rival Madara. He was considered to be the strongest shinobi of his era, period, which is saying a lot. He was stronger than Madara, and Madara could take on 5 Kage on his own pretty easily, so it goes to show the power gap that there can be between Kage. So saying someone is Kage level may imply a base of strength, but that range can vary greatly. There is much that can be said, but Hashirama is mostly known for his wood release, his cells that everyone wants a piece of to enhance their own powers, and for being another reincarnation of Asura Otsutsuki just like Naruto. The second Hokage was Tobirama Senju, the little brother of Hashirama. Although he was less powerful, he did have his strengths. Tobirama was fast and strong enough to kill Madara's brother Izuna Uchiha, which kind of makes you feel bad for the Uchihas who keep losing in these matchups. Tobirama was the strongest shinobi in Konoha during his time as Hokage, and he even survived an encounter with the Gold and Silver's brothers, with their 9 Tails chakra and treasured Sage of Six Paths tools. He eventually sacrificed his life to help his team escape alive and named Sarutobi his successor. Some highlights include the fact that he created the Shadow Clones technique, specialized in water release techniques, and excelled in space-time ninjutsu. He created the Flying Thunder God technique that Minato was famous for mastering as well, and this allowed both to mark a spot, which could be a person's body even, and then teleport themselves and or other things to that spot. Another fun thing to do is to throw a marked kunai to get across a battlefield extremely quickly. And lastly, I'll mention that the genius Tobirama also created the Edo Tensei, or Impure World Reincarnation technique that Orochimaru was so into. It straight up returned the souls of dead people and put them in regenerating bodies. Quite the insane technique, and we have Tobirama to thank for it, albeit Orochimaru did improve on this forbidden technique. So there's more that could be said, but Tobirama for me is mostly remembered as an innovator who created many techniques that would go on to be used and refined by others after his death. Hokage number 3 was Hiruzen Sarutobi, also referred to as the God of Shinobi. When the series began, this is the old dude that was serving as Hokage. He was the most powerful Kage of his lifetime. Not only that, Iruka Sensei lets us know that he was nicknamed the Professor, and that even compared to the other Kage, which at this point included the first to fourth, Sarutobi was said to have possessed superlative strength, which would suggest that he was at least the second strongest of the 4, if not the first. Obviously, this could be Iruka hyping him up, and public perception doesn't always reflect reality, but the fact that only Hashirama and Sarutobi were called God of Shinobi definitely suggests that they were the 2 strongest out of the 4. He was so strong that even as an old man, he managed to stop Orochimaru, who had the help of the reincarnated first and second Hokage. That was probably one of the most legendary fights / moments in Naruto, and even in anime in general. If a legendary character has to die, that's the way to do it. And Orochimaru pretty much admitted that if Sarutobi was 10 years younger, he would have killed Orochimaru. But this should also add to our respect to the over 80-year-old Onoki, since Sarutobi was 69 when he died. Sarutobi was known as the Professor because of his vast knowledge, and it was said that he could use any technique. He was known for his personal summon Enma, the Monkey King. The Monkey King could transform into an extendable staff, aka power pole, that was as hard as diamond. It was Sarutobi's weapon of choice, although it was heavy and the weight did become more of an issue as he got older. So clearly you have Journey to the West and Dragon Ball vibes when it comes to Sarutobi and his Monkey King summon. Lastly, I'll mention the OP Dead Demon Consuming Seal, an Uzumaki clan technique that allowed Sarutobi to call upon a Shinigami. Then in exchange for the user's soul, the Shinigami will seal the target's soul. What's crazy is that you could replace your real body with a shadow clone and still use this technique. So if Sarutobi was younger and he had more chakra for more shadow clones, he could have sealed Orochimaru's abilities or even his entire soul without actually sacrificing his own life. When used, Orochimaru didn't even know a technique like this existed, and that's saying a lot since Orochimaru was very well versed in techniques, including forbidden jutsu. And the other cool thing is there's no telling how many more techniques Sarutobi knew about. Moving on to the 4th Hokage, Naruto's dad, Minato Namikaze, the Yellow Flash. Jiraiya called Minato a rare genius, the kind you don't see very often. And as the 4th Raikage mentioned, he believed he was the fastest shinobi after Minato's death, acknowledging that Minato was faster than even him. One of my favorite details about Minato is that villages told their shinobi to flee the moment they saw Minato during the 3rd Shinobi War. That's how dangerous this dude was. And he died bravely saving the village from a disguised Obito and the Nine Tails. It was wished that he was there when Orochimaru attacked the village, suggesting that he would have been able to deal with the powerful villain better than anyone else. I always liked the idea of having super speed as a superpower when I was a kid, which adds to how much I like Minato because he'd pretty much take down enemies as soon as they saw him, if not sooner. He was similar to Naruto in that he could summon Gamabunta, the Chief Toad, and use the Rasengan, which he actually developed after observing Tailed Beast bombs. The Rasengan was perfect for him because it complemented his fast fighting style due to it not requiring hand seals. As mentioned, he not only learned the 2nd Hokage's Flying Thunder God technique, but honed and improved upon it to the point where he had greater mastery over it than its creator. Tobirama even admitted that Minato was better at teleporting than him. And one of the most epic fight moments in the series was when he used the technique against Obito, a teleportation master in his own right, and caught him off guard by teleporting to where his marked airborne kunai was. He then immediately launched a devastating Rasengan. He also managed to mark Obito's body without Obito noticing and eventually forced Uchiha to retreat, but not before he freed the Nine Tails from Obito's control. And I really like how it was shown that Minato was faster than all 3 previous Hokage when they were all brought back with the Edo Tensei. Lastly, we can mention how Minato became a Jinchuriki of the yin half of the Nine Tails right before he died. When he was brought back with the Edo Tensei, he could actually enter Nine Tails chakra mode. In this form, he could straight up launch Tailed Beast bombs and do all the fun stuff Naruto can do. And we should be moving on, but I also want to just point out that Minato was very smart to the point where he had the highest scores in Academy history, so in this sense, Naruto definitely wasn't a chip off the old block. Next, we got the 5th Hokage Tsunade, the granddaughter of the 1st Hokage. She's got that powerful Senju and Uzumaki blood in her system. She was regarded as the strongest female ninja and the best medical ninja. She is respected as one of the Sannin, along with Jiraiya and Orochimaru. Some highlights include her powerful physical strength, which was strong enough to earn praise from Madara and to break through his Susanoo ribcage. The strength of 100 seal is also hyped because it is a jutsu from the Sage of Six Paths era and is believed to be the most advanced version of chakra control. For a long time, the user stores chakra in one point of their body, then they can release that chakra and it will give them a huge power boost. Tsunade can also use Creation Rebirth, considered the pinnacle of medical ninjutsu and the ultimate regeneration technique. The body's natural cell division is sped up to the point where the user immediately heals from any wounds while the technique is active. However, such a broken technique must have side effects, and here you are shortening your lifespan every time you use it. Also, we know that Tsunade can summon Katsuyu, the giant slug, that can aid her in her healing efforts. Lastly, I'll mention that even though she is in her 50s, she uses a transformation technique to make it look like she's in her 20s. This technique will effortlessly maintain itself even while she's sleeping, except if she runs out of chakra. Then we got Hokage number 6, Kakashi Hatake, the very cool man known as Kakashi of the Sharingan, even though ironically, he doesn't have the Sharingan when he's Hokage. He was another natural prodigy, Kakashi was all around a strong ninja, possessing all nature transformations in Yin Yang release, was said to be more intelligent than Shikamaru, and he is also extremely skilled at taijutsu. He had to replace his signature move Lightning Cutter with Lightning Release Purple Electricity because the former wasn't safe to use without the Sharingan. He could also summon his pack of dogs. When people from different villages saw Kakashi, they would see the similarity between him and his father, Sakumo Hatake, who was feared as Konoha's White Fang. I've seen hilarious memes about how people freak out at seeing Kakashi's white hair and make the connection with his famous white-haired dad, but never seem to notice the obvious similarities between the blonde-haired and blue-eyed Naruto and his even more famous blonde-haired and blue-eyed dad, Minato, the Yellow Flash. And when you think about it, that is a pretty interesting observation. Last but not least, you better believe we got Naruto Uzumaki, the Nine-Tails Jinchuriki, and the son of the 4th Hokage. Again, we're gonna breeze through this zero-to-hero ninja who went from being an outcast to fulfilling his dreams and becoming the hero of the Hidden Leaf. Naruto is another reincarnation of Asura Otsutsuki, and so was pretty much destined for greatness, even before he became a Jinchuriki. We know him well for his use of the Shadow Clone Jutsu, the Rasengan, the summoning of toads, his sexy jutsu, and his Sage mode and many Nine-Tails modes, including Nine-Tails Chakra mode, Kurama mode, Tailed Beast mode, 6-Path Sage mode with Nine-Tails Chakra Cloak, and most recently, the very hype and OP Baryon mode. This last form is the strongest we've seen but burns through chakra real quick and can ultimately lead to the death of its user. Notably, it also shaves more and more of the lifespan off of the opponent with every touch as well. Naruto now is by far the strongest Kage on this list, which is not surprising for our shonen protagonist. And that is it. Remember, if you want the Hokage broken down in greater detail, you should check out my specific all 7 Hokage and their powers explained video. And don't forget to absolutely destroy that like button if you enjoyed this long video and want to see more like it. These videos in particular take a long time to make, obviously, so it really helps when you smash that like button and leave a comment saying you want more and leaving any suggestions for future video ideas. If we can get 6,000 likes on this one, I'll get started on the next Naruto video ASAP. If you haven't, be sure to subscribe, and this is crucial. Hit that notification bell and select all, or you will miss future Naruto videos. And while you wait for the next video to drop, be sure to check out my growing Naruto playlist, which includes videos about the Hokage, Otsutsuki, Uzumaki, and much, much more. And until next time, see ya, Space Cowboys!